is Ruel's Running Podcast, a podcast about running, health, family, play, and an NSNG lifestyle. And now, here's your host, Ruel.
Excuse me as I rock on. That's Went Away by Dorothy Lane. Dorothy Lane out of Martinez, California. That's out of the Cut and Dry album. Check them out at dorothylanemusic.com. Yeah. Hey everybody, it's Ruel. How's it going? It is February 16th and it is 6:30 in the morning and I am headed out to a 50K, the Lake Chabot, and I'm just going through the motions as folks who are just tuning in may not know, is I'm a hobby, I'm a novice, I feel like I'm still kind of new at this, doing these events, and I guess it's because I just started doing these events last year. Oh, well, what is it, 2019, 2018? No. I think sometime mid-2017. No, that doesn't sound right. 2017 is when I started. Still feels like it was yesterday. And I still feel like it's a big deal. And it is. I don't want to try to make it sound like it's nothing. But it's funny how you read or you hear folks running, 50 miles, 100K, 100 miles plus, and it almost, when you read it or you hear it, it's almost like it was tough, but they got it done, and because you only hear the stories in a minute or two as it's described, it comes across to me as, people have locked down on how to get it done, and it's kind of like a breeze, but I know that it's not. So what that does for me is I look at the 50K distance and I'm thinking like, yeah, it ought to be easier than it is for me, but it's not. I'm not the speediest guy, and I tend to utilize as much of the clock as possible. I don't go out to use it as much of the clock as possible. I just happen to. I do try to get through it as fast as I can, but I'm just not that guy. And what it ends up being is, depending on the course, it's 8.5 hours out on a trail. Either the heat or the cold, or the slosh. Definitely, it's got its climbs and its descents, and and a whole lot of periods of loneliness. So, and sometimes it takes 10 hours, and I'm still getting used to that. Well, I don't know if you can get used to it, but it's sort of like this thing that I have to do. And 8-10 hours plus, there are guys that go out there and they run 24 hour run at 24 hours at a time, 24 hours, 40. There's definitely, in this world of ultra running, way more than this, this basic distance of 50K. And it sounds kind of mental coming from a standpoint of someone who can't even imagine running a mile, 5K, 10K, whatever, right? I'm like stuck in almost what I feel like in the middle at this point, as far as I'm just kissing, I'm just like kissing the feet of this ultra running at this distance. I have attempted the 50 miles several times solo, but always fell short around 41, 42 miles. Simply because it was a solo run and I just kind of had enough of the day. So anyways, it's the morning of my third registration with the Lake Chabot Redtail Ridge 50K. It's put up by Inside Trail Racing. So I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be wet. I mean, the conditions, it's been raining for the past several days. So I'm expecting a lot of slosh and mud and cold. Back in 2017 when I did it, it was pretty much like this. And I managed to dead last finish, official finish, that one. Then the following year, last year, 2018, it wasn't wet. And I managed to complete the course, pass the cutoff, and still be considered dead last, unofficial. So, there's an opportunity for me to three-peat this year. I don't want to three-peat being dead last, but I do definitely want to finish the course. So we'll see how it goes. Kind of stoked, because I know of at least one person who may be looking forward to seeing me. That doesn't mean a whole lot, but Ken Michael, who I know a little bit, as a podcaster, runner, that's the stuff we have in common. But he's way up there in experience and distance and time in races. And as a matter of fact, have him scheduled at the moment. Hopefully it pulls through, where he is going to be a guest on the Ultra Diner with Tony Portera and myself. So we confirmed that recording, that call, that conversation, and and he happened to notice that I'd be at Lake Chabot as well. So he's like, "Hey, not only are we good to go for the podcast, but get to see you on, hopefully see you race morning." I'm like, "Cool," and that's pretty much what it's going to be. I get to see people in the morning at the start, and by the time I get to the finish line, they're practically tearing down the thing. So, and there's practically nobody there. But it is what it is. So I'm not going to run through like, what kind of gear am I wearing? What am I wearing? And what kind of nutrition? Because it hasn't really changed. If you go back to last year's Lake Chabot update, I'm pretty much packed the same thing. As a matter of fact, I'm stopping off at a Nob Hill Foods to pick up maybe an extra or two of the meat bars. I just noticed that whatever I had in the pantry had expired a couple months back, and in an 8-hour trail run, I'm not gonna chance eating a 2-month expired meat bar. That might not mean good for the trail, because my butt would explode all over the place, and that would not be good. So that's sort of like my morning so far, and I'll catch up with you at some point in the day or not. All right, thanks. Hey folks, it's another 50K, and I'm just sitting. I've got 30 minutes to start, and so what I typically do is I'll sit in the vehicle and try to stay as warm as possible. It's nice out, but it's also wet and 40 degrees outside. So I sit here and peel off the layers. I'm gonna put on the my number, and going to run this thing, the 50k distance. And I got my pack, and I got my poles, and I was let me show you what I got going on my legs. So these are Better Than Naked from the North Face. I like these shorts. I forget what other than that name, but they've got little pouches in the inner liner. So I've got the meat bar. This is an almond butter with it has coconut oil in it, so I'm gonna give those a try. I know they say don't try anything new on race day, so guess what, I'm gonna try something new. And on this other side, more pouches, I've got raw almonds. In my hand carry, I'm gonna have a mixture of the UCAN Superstarch, the plain, and not my hand, this bottle, the water bottle, and then I've got a bladder in here. I don't know, 72 ounces or something, or I don't know how many ounces, 72 ml maybe, I don't know. And ready to rock and roll. I swear, whenever I come to these things, it's like I've never changed my clothes because I typically wear the same gear. The only thing that's different this year is that my hat is not my old raggedy, stinky, eat, fat, and run. So this is the, use this black hat just for a little change. So silly. My dilemma this morning last night was deciding on which pair of ultra Lone Peak shoes I should wear today. I know it sounds kind of mental, but the dilemma is I have an older pair which I'm wearing now, so you'll know what my choice was. But at the time it was wear the older pair which has less tread, which means less grip during the on the terrain, but the fit is right, versus the newer pair which has and it's not really new, it's more like, I don't know, I wear them out pretty fast because I use them day to day, but they're lesser old. They've got great tread, but the sizing is like a half size smaller. So the choice was better fitting with no tread, or worse fitting with great tread. So I opted for the better fit, and I'll just manage the tread, lack of tread. We'll see how it goes. I'd rather slip and slide a bit. I mean, I think you can't avoid it anyways. I'd rather slip and slide than damage my toes. I think that would torture me more mentally than slipping and sliding. Like I said, I think people are going to slip and slide anyways, but most people aren't going to have to worry about pounding their toes so much. And with the descent, that's going to be even worse. I'd have to compensate somehow to try avoid damaging my toes, and probably risk knee injury or hip injury or something like that, because I am old. So I'm sitting in the truck. It's cold outside. It seems like everybody else is sitting in their vehicle, except for the folks who are going to need to take a leak. And I think I need to go take a leak again. All right, that's that. 2019 Inside Trail Racing, Lake Chabot Redtail Ridge. My third start, and we'll see how it goes. Awesome. Hey guys, all done. That was fast. Not really. I missed getting swept somewhere before the second to the last aid station, which was mile 25. And had I not, from that aid station, I would have been able to complete what's called the pink ribbon section. I think maybe it's about 2 miles of trail. And then back to that, then I would loop around to that same aid station. Then I would have 3 miles, I think, to get to the finish, which is trail and then ending in paved. So yeah, so I say missed getting swept because by the time I got to that aid station, and we would have just missed each other because I was getting close to that aid station, and I could see the yellow ribbon because I was telling the race director, I was telling Tim, or I was telling one of the other guys, I forget. It was the aid station captain. I was like, I remember specifically seeing the ribbon because I apparently was hallucinating that there was a photographer just behind the ribbon, so I better like keep my head, stop doing this to my head as I kind of went up the hill. I would have to like smile, for the camera, and then when I looked up, like, oh, there isn't a photographer. So I ran past that ribbon, and then somewhere between that and the aid station, the sweeper and I missed each other. And it wouldn't have mattered anyways, because if the sweeper and I met up, then I'd still have to run back to the finish at that point. All it meant was I missed the sweeper. I got to the aid station while they were tearing down, and they said, yeah, we're shutting down. It's, so at that point I ran back from the aid station. So at a little bit more distance to, getting myself back to my truck, essentially. So I'm happy that I got miles. So I've got, I guess, 28 miles. So I was shy a few miles to complete the course. I've completed the course twice before. I know exactly. I was so behind, and I know exactly why. And I brought trekking poles this time, but I know that trekking poles were a massive aid, but they weren't an aid enough to keep me moving along quicker. Remember when I said that I had to make a choice between shoes that fit well, that weren't banging my toes, but had no tread, versus shoes that would bang my toes eventually when my feet would swell up, but at least they had, pretty good tread. This year I could have really used that tread. Maybe I could have just managed the banging my toes if it meant me, moving along better. it was grody, right? It was, the first time I did this 2 years ago, it was soup and slush, and there was some soup, but there was still a lot of slush. And with my shoes, and I should have shown you, they practically slick, because I wear them day to day and I run on them on pavement. So I abused the trail shoes by not running them in the trail. Yeah. So if it weren't for the poles, the sticks, I would have fallen down more. I would have had a really hard time moving along. Even with the sticks, speaking of falling down, I fell a bunch. I fell on I was thinking about my knee, like, oh gosh, I hope I don't hurt my knee, my right knee. Oh, and then slip, bam, right on top of that knee. I'm like, okay, I guess I don't have to worry about that knee getting injured because that answers that. But it didn't bug me. I fell. It's like your feet get taken. It's like running on ice. It's like you want to go that way, then suddenly your feet goes that way, and then the poles go every which way, and it's a big stilty kind of mess, if that even is a thing. But yeah, I got it done. I'm happy. There's a lot of takeaways. I say there's a lot of takeaways, but I can only think of one takeaway right now that, leading up to mile 18 before the turnaround, because after mile 18, that you turn around and you get to do, a half marathon. There were some points in that first big loop that I was starting to doubt myself and starting to have some negative things go in my head, but I kept trying to talk myself overcome it, with more positive talk. And I swear to God, right? I'm listening to music all this whole time. I don't know how to use my iPod Shuffle too well, because I only use it for these events. And I was just getting sick and tired of all of the music on the playlist. And I specifically loaded hours of podcasts, specifically 10 Junk Miles. So Scotty, shout out, specifically, and Scotty and the gang. I'm sorry. There's just too many of you guys. Yeah, so I was so frustrated. I didn't do anything. I didn't do something right. I can't access these podcasts. I would hit the shuffle and I would just get the same dumb songs over and over again. And I think before I hit the mile 18 station, I decided to try again to figure it out, and I learned how to switch from music to podcasts, and the podcast started playing, and it started to, change my mental attitude about the run. And I got to mile 18 with the aid station with the mentality of, you know what? If I haven't met the cutoff at mile 18, and if someone tells me to get off, I'm fine. It's just there's just been a lot of challenges on this course, and with me. But I was feeling good. But I got to the mile 18 station, got some hot chicken noodle soup. Oh my God, it's so good. But there was no one around to say, what's your bib number? Okay, you're behind, or you're ahead, or it's time for you to step off because you didn't meet the cutoff. So I just went back on my second loop. Saw a lot of runners, a lot of kudos, and I worked my way to that aid station as I described, only to find out it was clear. It was they were tearing down the canopy, all of the the aid station food, packed up. Tables were clear, and I've seen that before, and it's just game over at that point. Game over because there weren't any more ribbons. So, I just worked my way back to the finish, and things were packed up. There were still folks here. I was starting to feel a little upset that is everybody completely gone? It's fuck, right? So, anyways, I walked past the crew, some of the volunteers who had a whole bunch of stuff, packed up and stacked. And I thanked them. I said, "Hey guys, thanks a lot for all your work." And then I just kept on walking. I'm just head to my truck. There's no point. There isn't any more food, nothing, right? I'm okay. And then I stopped myself. I realized wait a minute. I gotta get the shirt, and in the past they're still cool about getting the glass, it's pretty cool. Check it out. It's a sympathy, I think, and I'm happy for it. It's sort of like a sympathy, a token of, thank you for your participation in our event, and I'm happy. In a way, I do these events so that I can get the glass. Anyway, and yeah, I got to talk to some of the volunteers, and they're cool. They're very cool. And then, and then just as I was heading to my truck, I met the aid station captain. I'm sorry, I can't remember your name. I'm bad. Who, had to break the news to me that I didn't meet cutoffs. And then he directed me to flag down the race director, Tim, just to let him know that I was back, because I guess they were waiting for me, which is nice. But yeah. Anyways, it's time for me to head home. Reception sucks here. I can't reach the family really well. So yeah, guys, thanks for watching. Am I gonna post this online? Okay, bye. Hey everybody, it's Ruel, and it is about 5 days out since the Lake Chabot 50K, and I've had one run in since the event race. So it was a Saturday event. I went running on Monday. Went for an hour. Felt good. It was cold out though, but so I made sure to run out under the sunlight, and had a long sleeve on. But anyways, never mind what I was wearing. Just wanted to let folks know that yes, I banged up myself pretty good at the event, and yes, I was sore, but not as sore as I would have been. And this is where I get into NSNG type stuff. Not as sore as I would have been had I really carved up and went far from NSNG during the event, mostly, and largely after the event. I did celebrate wrapping up the event by having some Japanese food with the family. I was like, I need to not be too concerned about what the NSNG stuff, but enjoy a bit. And it wasn't about me just picking whatever I wanted, because the family is here. Back in 2012 when I did my first 50K distance, my wife asked me what I wanted to do after getting it done. I'm like, I want to go to a steakhouse, and I'm going to get myself a nice tall glass of beer. And I was in NSNG at the time. But, the point is that it was just my wife and I, and my wife and I, and we had just the two boys, and they were pretty young, and I'm pretty sure, they weren't eating hearty enough for it to really matter where we went to dine, because we probably would have packed, food for them along with diaper bags and all that stuff. So went to like Black Angus, and got me a steak, and I got me a big old beer. There's a picture of me somewhere, but I remember that time, 2012, not NSNG, having completed the 50K distance. It was a solo event. I forgot how long it took me. It probably took me like forever and a day. But we went to dinner, and I could barely walk. I was at the restaurant trying to get up from the table to get to the restroom and back. I could barely walk. I was smashed. But, here I am several years, living NSNG as much as possible, and paying careful attention to how I fuel day to day, so that I can increase my chances of recovering better. I'm not what do you call it? I am not a repeat runner of these types of events, meaning I don't go out month to month or week to week, pretty regular. It's once in a while. It's sort of like, I don't know, once every 3 months maybe. At best, I'd get into something. But for as much as I am able to do right now, I do pay attention. I do want to recover still, because it doesn't mean that I need to speed up my recovery so that I can run the next event. It means I just need to make sure that I recover well so that I can function day to day, get to work, be with the family, take care of the family, that kind of stuff. I got up the next morning, and I had some tiredness. I needed to drink a cup of coffee and sit down and sort of do some easy stretching. And once I sort of woke up, once I was done with a few minutes of stretching, I was better for it. I was able to go down the stairs from the bedroom right from waking up. I'm able to get up and down the stairs. It's there's some soreness, but the fact is I'm able to. There's the horror stories of first-time marathoners. They get pretty beat up and they can't even they can't get up and down the stairs, that kind of thing. So I know what that's like, pre-NSNG. So how am I now? 5 days out from the event. I'm good. I'm fine, And there's some thoughts that I likely didn't capture in the early audio, so on the day of the event. And I guess one of the things that I had to say about the experience was that with this being my third go at it, yes, I didn't finish by the cutoff. I was able to, before being told that I was done, I got 25 miles in, and with nowhere else for me to go but back to the finish start, I had to run that remaining 3 miles, and so that got me to, which is still part of the course. So unofficially, I covered 28 miles of the course. The pink section was what I wasn't able to accomplish. The biggest thing that I wanted to take away now after 5 days have passed is that I really felt great. I really felt great going out and accomplishing the run, no matter how it turned out. And it felt great because I consciously decided to not look at my watch. If race staff were to tell me that where I was, how far back I was from cutoff or ahead, that was great. If the race staff told me I'm cut off, then that's fine, and then I wouldn't be able to continue. That's fine, and which is actually what happened. But I intentionally didn't look at the clock, the watch. I didn't worry about trying to calculate how much more time and distance and pace and all this jazz. I just went for the run, told myself I'm going to plow through and wait for someone to tell me that I'm done. And what that did for me was a whole lot of peace of mind, and that meant a lot, because the first loop, which was the first 18 miles, I struggled, right? There were moments where I felt really great in the beginning, and then it got to a point where I was like, okay, I'm really sort of starting to have doubts about what I'm doing, and I didn't allow it to get too heavy, because I would jump in to my thoughts and say, yeah, you're feeling crummy, but you know what? You signed up to be uncomfortable. You signed up to feel, some suffering, and follow that up with, this will pass. As fast as you went from feeling great to feeling low, just give it some time and just keep plowing through, and then it'll change, and then it'll pass, and you will be out of it. So whenever I felt that negativity or the lows, I kind of just did that positive self-talk, and knowing that happens. It happens where you know, the lows come so quick, but as quick as they come, they can also, the highs can come, and you got to cherish the highs. And what I've learned too is that there's a point where once you're sort of done kind of this back and forth, at least that's how it was with this event, the mental back and forth, the highs and the lows, I felt that at some point as the day got longer, that will all just go away, and then it would just be me, and sort of just moving along. I don't know if that even makes any sense. I guess I'm under the belief that at some point, everything just sort of, yes, everything hurts, everything's uncomfortable, everything's an effort, but in a way, it becomes the new normal, and you no longer have to have that struggle and that dialogue in your head about feeling uncomfortable, because the body would have just accepted it, and now it's just you moving forward. That's sort of what I've felt, that I've experienced, and I've sort of come to sort of articulate, I guess, as had happened, because before mile 18, I struggled, and I was able to change my mood based on what I was putting in my ear. I was listening to music for a greater part of the first 18 miles, and I wasn't happy anymore with it. And I figured out how to change my what I was listening to podcasts, and there were podcasts that talked about running and from more accomplished athletes, with a long history in the sport, and that stuff really intrigued me and got me paying attention, and as long as I was healthy mechanically, I was able to just sort of ride my legs through the course, listening, having this wonderful distraction of the discussion on the podcast. I was listening to 10 Junk Miles, that episode with Scotty Coomer interviewing Lisa Smith Batchen, and so that was released pretty close to when the event was in February. It was a long, what Scotty in his podcast, what he described as a long run, and that went for a little over 2 hours, I think, and that was good. And I hit mile 18, and I was feeling good. I wasn't feeling beaten up, and I just kept on going. It's the first time in all my attempts in this event where I just was able to keep on going. There was no real mechanical knee or IT band, or come to think of it, there were at least 2 times when my left calf seized up, but that was early in the first loop, and then it stopped happening once I sort of went past that point of mental struggle or internal struggle, and I was just able to just flow. I wasn't fast. I didn't finish. I'm not an official finisher. I was an official starter. I got 28 miles on my feet. I'm happy. I felt great that I didn't have to, kind of beat myself mentally to just try and figure it out. I just went, and I said I would enjoy the run. I would enjoy the day. And so what that means is, for me, is that I think I'm learning. I'm definitely still learning, and this race is going to be different from the next, but it was an experience that I didn't think that I would get out of participating in this year's event. If you're a runner and you do these types of things, you probably have experienced it already, and maybe what I'm saying you understand and to some degree hopefully appreciate. Because to me, it's just stuff that I'm realizing, And that's just me being what I self-describe as the novice runner in me, right? I don't go out there often enough to learn these lessons quicker, but when I do, it's an experience that I know that I'm gonna put myself into, whatever it's 8 or 10 hours. That's gonna put me in a place where I can try to find something and come away with something. I can't get that out of a shorter distance, quicker effort, because, you know, like I imagine a lot of other folks who run the longer distances, you know, they need to get to a certain point before they need to beat themselves up pretty good to be able to get to that point. I mean, I don't know what else to say. I'm just going to be beating up the clock here on the audio. But yeah, very, very stoked about how it all ended, how it all went down, and I appreciate everybody's time. I appreciate the folks at Inside Trail Racing, all the volunteers. I shout out to Ken Michael, who I saw a few times on the course, maybe 3 times I think. Shout out to Dago Calderon, who I saw on the course. He was a volunteer and also photographer, I believe, from what it looked like. Shout out to Mark Tanaka, who I saw. I was still trying to get to the turnaround point up to mile 18, and he was already, wrapping up. Just kind of just trotted on by me. That's one thing. It's great to see, these fast guys, at these races. And many times it's been where the 50K event starts. If it starts along with a 30K, and, I'm maybe, 5 miles into it, and then suddenly there's this rush of faster folks, I don't know if you want to call them the pros or the elites of the event, but I don't know if it's intentional, but it feels like it's intentional, where there's a cluster of the faster guys who just choose to start after the start gun goes off. If this isn't a start gun, but it's just basically like a buzzer or something, and they just blow by, despite having started sometime after I started. And it's cool to watch. It's really cool to watch. Anyways, that's all I got. Thanks for listening. Take care. Catch you on the next one. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Ruel's Running Podcast with Ruel. If you like what you just heard, share it with your friends and your enemies. Also, be sure to check out the site over at ruelsrunning.com. This has been another Coffee with Heavy Cream production. Join us next time for another silly show of Ruel's Running Podcast.